a really critical mission that had previously gone unreported. It was a secret mission by Ukraine's military intelligence. And now obviously Ukraine has had success in driving Russia's Black Sea fleet out of the Black Sea, really to take harbor along the Russian mainland in ports like Novorossiysk, because of these naval drones that the Ukrainians have used so effectively against the Russian Black Sea fleet. And that's mean they haven't got the same kind of radar scanning abilities, the same kind of ability to see what's happening on the Black Sea as they once had. So they've tried to install them on these gas platforms, which are known as the Boyko Towers, in kind of in the middle of the Black Sea between Crimea and Odessa. And they had been quite effective in being able to anticipate Ukrainian attacks and scan all the way up into the southern coast of Ukraine and see what was taking off, what is approaching the coastline. And that had made it complicated for the Ukrainians. So they launched this very daring naval raid with two different types of drones. There's new Katran drones and the Maguras, which we've already become familiar with, sinking Russian ships. And in quite a complicated raid on these towers, they attacked with these Katrans, which are kind of like mini aircraft carriers. They carry FPV drones and fixed-wing aircraft-type drones, and they can also carry torpedoes. And so these drones approached the oil tower from one direction. They launched a decoy into the air, which attracted two Russian jets to try and shoot it down. And while those Russian jets were distracted, they made a kind of 100-kilometer arc around to the other side of the towers. They launched torpedo type drones, which have a kind of 50-kilometer range, towards the towers. And these torpedo drones impacted the towers, they also attacked with the FPV and aircraft type drones, hitting the Marines stationed on the towers, but also taking out these radar facilities.
It was an ingenious piece of planning, wasn't it? Who did you get to talk to who was involved?
So we talked to the commander of this Unit 9. He's a commander of the Black Sea Legion, which are using these Katran drones. And he told us in detail. They showed us video about how they conducted the operation. We also got to see these drones on the water and how they work. And it was fascinating the way that these drones, they're also trained using AI. We saw how that was working. They had pictures from Dagestan TV, which is, a Russian propaganda channel, showing Russian naval vessels, and they were training the AI using this video from, and you could see the AI recognizing if it was an enemy vessel or if it was a civilian vessel or if it was unknown, with red boxes or green boxes or white boxes or yellow boxes appearing over these vessels. And the technology at work in these places, it's astonishing. So you have a special forces unit that's kind of embedded in a Miltech startup company. In one room, they have mission planners. In the next room, they have 3D printers churning out components.
What can you tell us about the Katrans that were used? How many were used, and how robust are they when they're going on that kind of operation?
So they just launched two Katrans. So they had an X1 and an X3, which are able to launch these aircraft. They've now got a different type of Katran called the Venom, which has a minigun on the front of it. It's got a Browning machine gun on top that can engage aerial targets. And it's also got these torpedoes fixed underneath the wings so they can engage targets at sea from a distance. They're pretty fast. They go almost 100 kilometers an hour, despite all these heavy armaments. They're very, very maneuverable. And they have a very low profile. So it makes it difficult for the Russians to see them on the water. They are advanced in terms of the technology that is packed into them. They have all kinds of different sensors that tells the team operating them how the Katran is doing, if it's taking on too much water, if it gets damaged, and it also has a munitions loadout, so you can see on a kind of heads-up display how many aircraft you have, and the AI can help you determine what's the best course of action. If you have a target that you need to attack, the likelihood of success of these different planes getting through, how many you should use, it can advise on all of that.
Do you get a sense that this is being used more widely then by the Ukrainians, these kind of tactics?
Definitely, I think AI is the next thing that is coming into Ukrainian forces drones. It's easier to use it on the sea because targets are more recognizable, they're bigger, it's more difficult to make a mistake and have friendly fire hit a civilian vessel. So this is definitely the forefront, the cutting edge of the technology war, and I think we're going to see it deployed more and more often.
So just going back to the 21st of September, then they took out the radars using the sea drones, and then this made way for the Magura drones to attack Russia on the mainland. Is that right? Talk me through it.
Right, so the Magura fleet were then able to attack the Russian port of Novorossiysk, and there were some videos we could see of them impacting oil loading and gas loading facilities in that port and destroying them. And there were also then the FPV attacks on the street, and there's been continued attacks since. So taking out this radar allowed the Maguras to get all the way. It's a much greater distance, obviously, from the southern Ukrainian coast all the way around Crimea to Novorossiysk. But having these radar stations taken out, the Ukrainians have been able to strike again and again and again, and they've also had more success with their deep strike drones flying over the sea and attacking Novorossiysk. But it's not just Novorossiysk. We've also seen more and more intense attacks on Crimea. We've seen AN-26 transport planes being attacked and destroyed in Crimea since that radar was taken out. We've seen experimental aircraft in Russia taken out, more and more air defenses and helicopters and standby on Crimea taken out as well. So it's had a huge impact on the war in the Black Sea theatre.
And so how well equipped are the Russian forces to stop them?
So the Russians obviously have their countermeasures. They've been trying to use planes to destroy them. They've been trying to use drones as well to attack these the naval drones as they come into the surface. But you see, because they're quite cheap and effective, and they have these AI capabilities, and they predict, how to best anticipate the Russian defenses and defeat them, it's getting harder and harder for the Russians. So some drones inevitably get through. Now, obviously, the next stage of that is the Russians trying to develop better countermeasures, and then the Ukrainians will develop again better ways of attacking. So it's this cat and mouse game. But at the moment, the Ukrainians are doing really, really well with this in the Black Sea.
And really interesting that you never really hear President Putin talking about what's happening in the Black Sea.
Right. There's no reason for him to talk about it. It's embarrassing that they have this huge, expensive Black Sea fleet, which has basically had to hide itself on the Russian coastline.
Mm. So as you say, Ukraine's had extraordinary success against the Russian Navy in the Black Sea using its uncrewed surface and underwater vessels. How has that interdicted the Russians' ability to move any vessels in the Black Sea, be it civilian or otherwise?
Right. So now they've started hitting these oil and gas port facilities in Novorossiysk, which is a really important trading hub for the Russians. It's a really important exporting oil and gas place. But we've also seen the Ukrainians start to attack sanctioned tankers on the Black Sea. So these are Western sanctioned tankers, and damaging them pretty severely, and obviously damaging the kind of the engine and the steering abilities. Now, these are civilian vessels. They're Gambia flagged, but they're part of the Russian Black Sea fleet. Yet they're used, obviously, to help amass money for Putin's war chest. So it's controversial. It's a controversial tactic to attack this shipping in the Black Sea. But it is obviously demonstrating Ukraine's determination to attack the source of funding for Russia's war machine and really make it difficult and punish the Russians, especially in the kind of oligarchs' pockets, for prosecuting this war in Ukraine.
And do you think this signals an intent to widen the scope for attacks on Russian shipping?
I think so. I think this is a warning signal that if you continue to send sanctioned tankers through the Black Sea, we are going to start taking them out. And I think it's also an encouragement for the West to do more, because obviously these sanctioned tankers are still sailing around the world. They still go through the English Channel, all over the world, and they're not stopped by any international powers. So they're stopped sometimes if they're suspected of being involved in sabotaging undersea cables, but they're not stopped simply for carrying oil, even though they're sanctioned. And I think Ukraine is frustrated by that and is starting to take matters into its own hands.
Having said that, the Ukrainians have been quite careful, haven't they, to choose their targets?
They have been careful. They very clearly ships that were already sanctioned. They're not just any old ship that's going through the Black Sea and using the Novorossiysk ports. They also seem to take caution to make sure they didn't hit a full oil tanker, which would cause a lot of environmental damage and be controversial. But, there's always the risk of mistakes being made in this kind of warfare. And I think it's something that Ukraine wants the West to take notice. All of this money is still pouring into Putin's war chest at a time when Europe says that it realizes the importance of Ukraine standing up for the rest of Europe. So what is Europe going to do about interdicting these Russian vessels?
You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio. If you'd like to know more about the war in Ukraine, you can subscribe and sign up for a membership. You can also get more analysis by listening to Times Radio or read thetimes.com. But for now, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.